study with you. It's a pleasure to study with you together on Rosh Chodesh Kislev. We get to the third month of the year, and it's very, very special. I hope that we're speaking today of prayer. It's not the subject of this class, but I hope that you all managed to say Hallel and maybe to dance a little bit in Hallel also to feel happiness. Um, One of the basic ideas in Judaism is that no matter what happens to us and what are we going through, the calendar is stronger than anything. And Rosh Chodesh is a happy day
Mm.
despite any trouble or any hardship that we are holding, both personally, individually, and as a nation. And especially the month of Kislev is a month that we're celebrating Hanukkah. It's a month that we're meeting in the middle of the winter, and Hanukkah is the holiday of lights, where we're lighting 8 candles. We will have Hanukkah in the end of the month, on the 25th of the month, Kafhei Kislev, but the light starts already from today. And so I bless all of us that we will have more and more light that will scare away the darkness, and that as the days are getting uh, darker and darker, at least in the physical realm of the world, but maybe also spiritually, we will have the strength to light a candle within us and brighten both our lives and the lives
Mm.
around us. But this is not the subject of the class today. um, so, uh, Rav Yoav, um, can you hear me? Is it all okay?
Yes, I can hear you. I want to say hello to everybody. This is the first time I join here, and I'm very happy to start.
Welcome, welcome. I hope it will be a beginning of a big, big process and a big, big way for you to know more of our tradition. I just want to, before we start, I just want to mention that this is a Beit Midrash. It's a Beit Midrash means that it's a house of learning. So it's not only a class, but it's a place where a mutual learning is occurring. And so I would be very happy to hear your voice and to hear your thoughts shared. And also, since it's a Beit Midrash, it would be very nice if at least as many people as possible open their camera if they feel comfortable with it, if they feel that they're okay with it, to feel like we're together and to see the faces and so on. So Rav Yoav spoke in the past few meetings about the essence of the tefillah, of the prayer, some introduction to tefillah. The next classes, not this class, but the next few classes, um, you will go over all the prayers. First Shacharit and then Mincha and then Arvit. You will go into details and you will get acquainted with both the content and the practical way to practice the prayers. Our meeting is sort of an in-between meeting. It's a meeting that discusses the framework of the prayer, the time of prayer, and how are we going to be ready for the prayer. It's an extremely important class, but we will not be dealing with the content of the prayers now. So I assume that many questions about content will be coming up your mind. Please write them down and save them for the next classes, okay? Because today we will talk only about the framework. And I want to share with you um, making this full screen. Let me see. I'm just trying to make this full screen for you. Is this full screen? Do you see it full screen? No. Let me see. Here. Okay. Is it now full screen? Good. Okay, but now I don't see you guys. Just a second. I'm sorry. I want to do it as perfect as possible. No, it's not working. Okay, so we will, oh, here it is. Maybe like this. Okay. So, no, but I can't see you. Okay, we'll take it like this. I hope it will be fine. Okay. So, we're our subject today is the framework and times of the prayers of the day. And I will just continue with what Rav Yoav finished last week. The source of prayer is a very interesting subject, which I'm sure you spoke about a lot with Rav Yoav. What is the essence of prayer? Why should a person pray? Why, how come the prayers came about and in which way? But once the prayers have become an obligation, we'll talk a little bit about how they became an obligation in the end of this class. But once they became an obligation, the basic question was, what is their framework? Where do they start? Where do they start? Where do they end? What exactly is the obligation? What does it contain? And and you will see that the main discussion that you learned about last week, whether whether the prayers were established after the forefathers, after the patriarchs, Abraham starting with Shacharit and Yitzchak with Mincha and Yaakov with Ma'ariv, or the other opinion that the prayers are some kind of a remnant from the sacrifices from the Korbanot, we will see that it has a very practical sense in defining the prayers. But we will start a bit before that with the Shema, because it's important to know, and it's not widely known, that basically the Shema is not essentially part of the prayer. There are two separate obligations. One is to read the Shema every day, and the other is to pray every day. We will see now how Shema was incorporated into the prayer, but actually, Shema and prayer are two different obligations. And therefore, also, we will see that their framework is different. So here we see the very basic source of Shema. It's a source that we are also saying in Shema. It's part of the Shema. It's part of what we're saying in Shema. Would anyone like to read out loud, either the English or the Hebrew? I don't see everyone, so if you want, just read. I won't see your hand up.
Can I try the Hebrew and you correct me?
Yes, absolutely.
Okay, so don't laugh, guys. והיו הדברים האלה אשר אנוכי מצוותך היום על לבביך ושיננתם לבניך ודיברת בם בשבתך, בביתך ובלכתך, בדרך ובשכבך ובקומך.
Perfect. Perfect. Almost perfect. I would give you 99 in the test.
Okay.
But let's read it in English just for those who did not understand it, like those who understand the Hebrew. And these words which I command you today shall be upon your heart. Impress them upon your children. Recite them when you stay at home and when you are away, when you lie down and when you get up. So in Shema, within Shema, we have an obligation to recite those words again and again, right? This is the obligation that we have within Shema. Make sure to say the Shema. We learn it from these words. And these words which I command you today, recite them. Okay, recite them. There's an explicit obligation, and the sages learned that it is an explicit mitzvah to recite the Shema. Now, the pasuk says it sounds as if it's all the time, right? It just goes on and on. When you stay at home, when you're away, when you lie down, when you get up, right? But the sages found here a very specific directive. When you lie down and when you get up. When you lie down means when we go to sleep at night, and when we get up means in the morning, right? And so this is the source that Shema is supposed to be said in the morning or in the evening and in the morning. By the way, this is another source where we see that in Judaism the day starts from the night, right? Because it doesn't say when you get up and when you lie down, like we would say today, from morning in the morning and in the night, but the opposite, right? First in the night when you lie down, and then when you get up, right? So this is the source of reading the Shema. And really, you will see, anyone who prays knows that in Arvit, in the night prayer, we have Shema. In the morning prayer, we have Shema. But in the afternoon prayer, in Mincha, we don't have Shema. This is because this is not part of the obligation. The obligation is to read it twice a day, when we lie down and when we get up. Now, the basic question is, when is it? Right? When do we lie up? When do we lie down? And when do we get up? Right? And this is I brought here the source of the Mishnah. The Mishnah, just to give anyone who's not familiar with these concepts, the Mishnah is the first rabbinical source after the Torah. The rabbis who sat down and tried to figure out through the Torah, what are we practically supposed to do? And this Mishnah is actually, we're now dealing with the first Mishnayot in all of the corpus. Mishnayot has 53 books in all walks of life, of Jewish life. The first tractate, the first book of the Mishnah is the tractate of Brachot, and the first chapter deals with the prayer and Kriyat Shema. So now you are reading the second Mishnah, the second paragraph in all of the corpus of the Mishnah, of the 53 books. And the Mishnah asks, from when does one recite the Shema in the morning? Okay, it says, Bekumecha, when you rise up. When does a man rises up? Right? And we should remember that we're talking about days when you have no electricity. Most people are working in the field. So you go to sleep when the sun is down, where you wake up when the sun is up, and you need to go to the field. And usually you need to go to the field early enough so you will finish by midday. We're talking not about Scandinavia, but about the land of Israel. So you can't work very much in the midday. And so people woke up very, very early. And so there is a debate between the rabbis. Some say it's when you distinguish between sky blue and white. This is when the sun came up enough that you can distinguish between sun blue and light, between sky blue and white. Um, and there are other options. There are other options as well um, in the Mishnah, and the Mishnah continues. What is the down limit? So the main opinion is you need to finish the Shema until Hanetzach, until sunrise. And Rabbi Yoshua says until 3 hours into the day. Why 3 hours into the day? Because this is the habit of kings. Oh, I see it was cut here. This is, oh no, it's not cut. This is the habit of kings to rise from their sleep at 3 hours of the day. Okay, so this is the basic disagreement. Okay, you need, when is morning considered morning? When do we start to call a morning morning? And when is it the end time of the waking up? It's basically a question of reality, right? If the Mishnah would have been written today, or if the Mishnah would have been written in Scandinavia, the answers would have been different, right? Because right now in the winter, maybe not now, but in a month and a half from now, everybody wakes up way before 3 hours into the day. Most people wake up before sunrise. Most people wake up before this point where you can distinguish between sky blue and white. So it's a very realistic uh, description, but this is the description that stayed. And in the I will say something about the difference of Scandinavia and the land of Israel soon. But the basic law is that um, you should say it in the morning when you wake up, and the limit is 3 hours into the morning. Now, I want to put here a parenthesis just to make sure all of us are aware. Um, the day, according to Judaism, is divided per day. It's very important to know. When we're saying 3 hours, it doesn't mean 3 in the morning. It means that all times, when you read about halachic times in halacha, we are taking in the very day that we are in, today, this Sunday, the moment that the sun rises, you see here, the moment that the sun goes down, that the sun sets, and we're dividing it into 12 hours. So that means that the winter, the hours are much shorter. In the summer, the hours are much longer. And it depends also where you are in the globe. And therefore, every time we're speaking about hours, what you should do is find a website or your local rabbi to tell you how to know what are the times according to the place you are on the globe. Nowadays, there's a very useful app. It's called Zmanim, where you can write down where you are on the globe, and the app gives you the times. There are slight differences in different things there, but you can count on that if you don't have any other source. If you have a source, if you have a rabbi that can or a luach that can tell you all these times, that's better. But if you don't have, the Zmanim app is a reliable app, or it's a website or whatever. So going back to here, when we're talking about the third hour, we're talking about the third relative hour on that day, right? The 3 hours from the moment that the sun rose relative to the time frame of 12 hours of the time between sunrise and sunset divided by 12. You don't need to make the math every day. Go to the app. I'm not asking you to make the math, but just so you know what we're talking about. Okay, so this is the basic time of Shema. Now, it's important to understand that I would say it in a general way, prayers have times, and that's important to follow. If we're getting into a point where we're losing the time for Shema or losing the time for Shacharit, it's a problem. And therefore, when we sign up to start obligating ourselves to mitzvot and to prayer, we have to bear in mind the time on the day. The fact that it is allowed to pray Shema until the third hour. Now let's talk about the summer, which is much more challenging, right? Some of us may get up after the third hour if the sun rose at 4 or I don't know. So some of us may get up later than that, and we need to make sure not to miss the time. In that context, it's interesting what the Mishnah says in the end, right? Let's read it here. One who recites Shema from that time onwards loses nothing. He is considered like one who reads the Torah and is rewarded accordingly. Now, this is a very interesting and delicate point. On one hand, the Mishnah wants us not to lose our frame. Even if you woke up or if you forgot or if something happened and you didn't read the Shema before 3 hours, you should not lose it. You should read it. But bear in mind that you didn't perform the mitzvah of reading Shema. You are performing a different mitzvah, a mitzvah of reading the Torah. Every person is obligated, and it's a big mitzvah to read the Torah every day. And the Mishnah says you have a mitzvah. Don't lose the Shema because you didn't meet the time frame, but realize that the mitzvah of Shema you have missed. Okay, now I want to say just a very, very small, again, a small parenthesis here because we're learning basic Judaism here. It's not exactly part of our class, but I still want to say a short thing about this. All of Judaism is divided into mitzvot lo ta'aseh, negative mitzvot, and positive mitzvot. Negative mitzvot doesn't mean that the mitzvot are negative, but that we are not allowed to do something, and mitzvot that we are expected to do something. Now, usually when we think about the problems we have with mitzvot, we're thinking about the negative mitzvot, right? I'm not allowed to break the Shabbat, but I have broken it. Now what do I do? Or how can I prevent myself from breaking Shabbat? Right? In tefillah, in prayer, we will meet a lot this idea of the positive mitzvot, which seem at first glance, seems a little weaker or a little lighter, right? I just didn't earn the mitzvah of Shema. Nothing really happened. I didn't break anything, right? It's not like breaking Shabbat. It's not like eating non-kosher. I was supposed to say the Shema and I didn't say it. I missed a positive mitzvah. Actually, in Judaism, it's important to understand that it has almost the same problem. We are expected to do things. We're expected to say the Shema every day. If we're missing it, we've missed something that we should have done. And the sources, already from the Talmud on, you can see it a lot in Hasidic sources. They say, when you break a mitzvah, it's easier to fix because you did something wrong. Now, when you repent, you're fixing it. But when you're not doing something that you were expected to do, you can never fix it because there's nothing to work with. You haven't broken anything. You just missed a whole big thing that you were supposed to work with. And so in some spiritual level, at least, breaking or not breaking, but missing a positive mitzvah is worse, is worse than breaking a negative mitzvah and then repenting on it.
Sorry, Rav. See, I had my hand up for a long time. I don't know if you can see it.
Yes,
Oh,
please.
it's just this is also about the framework. I noticed you didn't mention Modeh Ani. Is that on purpose, or is this is not counting in as a prayer? Because I was taught in the yeshiva that this prayer is recited before we wash our hands. That's why we don't mention Adonai.
Nachon. So we started, it's true, but we started with Shema, which is a completely different mitzvah.
Of course.
So we will finish with Shema, and then we will go to the prayer, which absolutely will mention Modeh Ani and Birkot HaShachar.
Thank you.
Okay.
I actually have a question, if I may.
Yes. Please.
Yes. So it says that like when you rise, when you wake up, what if you're really not a morning person and you're very, very tired in the morning? Is it better to wait for like an hour when your mind is more awake, or should you really do it as soon as you wake up?
So this is a good question, and we will get to it in a second.
Okay. Good.
Okay. Okay. Now, regarding the end, right. Regarding the end of the Shema. So the Shema of night. So the first Mishnah of the first tractate, the first Mishnah in the in the whole corpus of Mishnah talks about obviously the night Mishnah. Maybe I was supposed also to do it in that order. I did it in the Western order that we do first the morning and then the night. Maybe I should have switched. But the so the Mishnah asks, this is the first Mishnah, when do we start saying Shema at night? And I won't get into it because we have a lot to do, and we're already half into the class. But basically, the Mishnah says that you should start in Tzeta Kochavim when the first three stars are out. That's the end of the day or the beginning of the new day. And basically, you should say the Shema until morning, until dawn. But later on, the Mishnah says that it's true that you're supposed to do it until dawn, but the sages said that gave a limit of until midnight, so we won't get into a point where we're missing Shema by sleeping. So, so we should say the Shema at night from when three stars are out. This is b'shoch b'cha, when you go to sleep, right? And we're talking about those days where once the sun is set, you can't see anything. There's nothing you can do anymore. And therefore, you're going to sleep. You're going to sleep. You're saying the Shema, and you should say it until midnight. I added here, we won't get into it. I thought it's cute, but we won't get into it. A source that we're saying in the Haggadah, actually, during Pesach. We're saying a source that says that it was a revelation that we should say Shema also at night. Not only Shema, but to mention Yetziat Mitzrayim, which is the third part of Shema. But we won't get into it now. You're welcome to study it by yourself. If there's anyone who wants this document, I would be happy to give him. This is another little something, um, a source from the Talmud. I see I did not write the source here, and I don't remember where exactly, but it's from the Talmud of Brachot, referring to Tefillah. It was also taught in a Braita. The Vatikin would conclude the recitation of Shema with sunrise in order to juxtapose the blessing of redemption, which immediately follows the recitation of Shema, with prayer, and pray during the day. Regarding this custom of the Vatikin, Rabbi Zera said, what verse is the source of this tradition? And he gives a verse from Psalms, they shall fear you with the sun and before the moon for all generations. And Rabbi Yossi, I'm jumping to line 3 before the end. Rabbi Yossi ben Elakim testified in the name of the holy community in Jerusalem that one who juxtaposes redemption and prayer at sunrise will incur no harm for the entire day. So this is a little hint of how prayer is built today. And let's go back a bit. The Shema is built, and you will learn it at depth in a few classes. The Shema is built of Shema, 3 paragraphs of Shema. There are 2 blessings before Shema and 1 blessing after Shema. This is the whole group of which is called Shema. There were added 2 blessings in the beginning and before Shema, and 1 blessing after Shema. The last blessing, the subject of that blessing is the Geula, the redemption. It starts from the redemption from Egypt and goes to the redemption, the redemption in the future, which we hope will be very soon. And the Gemara here, the Talmud here says, there is a point, there is an idea of connecting those 2. That the Shema, especially the Geula, the redemption, and the prayer, the 18 blessings that we're saying in the Amidah, will be glued together. Now, soon we will see that the prayer could be started to recite only here, on the first ray of sun, only in this point. And therefore, we have a source which says, yes, even though the mitzvah of Shema starts from here, when you're recognizing either a friend or between white and blue, you should wait until close to here in order for you to connect those 2. And this is an answer to you, Louise, that yes, in most cases, it is even better not to say Shema right in the beginning. It's better not to say Shema right in the beginning, but to connect it to the prayer. And that's why it's very important that the prayer will be done as it is in the Siddur, starting from Birkot HaShachar, through Psukei de Zimra, the Shema, and then the Amidah. It's 2 different mitzvot, but the sages built it as one system. And therefore, unless we're getting into places of difficulties with the times, we should never separate them. And of course, if you need to pray later, if you happen to pray later, you don't need to be stressed about Shema, because all this time between Mishiyakir, between this point and the 3rd hour, is allowed for Shema. So it doesn't mean that you have to specifically do it right in the beginning. This is a time frame that we're allowed to say. Now, soon we will see that the time for prayer is later. So sometimes you will be in places, for instance, in many synagogues where on Shabbat you start praying late, that someone will say, or maybe no one will say, but you should notice that the beginning of the prayer is good for the prayer limit. but it's too late for the Shema limit, that you will say Shema as part of the Shacharit, you will say Shema too late. And then it's important to say Shema before the prayer, and then pray the Shema within the system of the whole Shacharit. And on Shabbat in Malmo, that's what I did, and I told other people to do as well, because when you start at the time that we start, uh, at least in the summer, it's way too late for Shema. So every Shabbat, I would say Shema in my house, and then come to the synagogue and pray the whole prayer. Okay. Now, before we're moving on to Mincha, I'll just say a few words regarding difficulties with these times. So, and now I'm saying real practically, okay? Now it's only practical and I won't explain too much about it, okay? Regarding the Shema, if you are in the winter and you woke up and you went to work way before sunrise, okay, and you're worried, when will I say the Shema? Even though it's better to start saying it from this point, from Mishayakir. By the way, for the men here, the time for Talit and Tfilin is also here, Mishayakir, not before that. It's okay to say the Shema from here, from Amud HaShachar, from the very, very first light of the day. And you will see these times in Maizmanim and in other apps. Okay? Regarding wait, oh, now it's Mincha. So okay, sorry. Rolling back. We're just before the technical issues. We talked about Shema. Now let's talk about prayer. Okay? So prayer is a totally different mitzvah. Sorry, there's some kind of slideshow here that was missed to me. I don't know why it's just dropped off. Prayer is a different story. Prayer, so strange that it was missed. Let's see. This is so strange. Okay, I'm sorry. So Shacharit, Mincha, and Arvit are three prayers that their source is, like you learned with Rav Yoav before, the sacrifices. Okay, the sacrifices that were given in Beit HaMikdash. In Beit HaMikdash, there would be two daily sacrifices, one in the morning and one in the afternoon. Even when you have learned that some of the sages think that the source of prayer are not the sacrifices, but the patriarchs, still everybody agrees that when we're trying to create a time frame for the prayer, we should look at the sacrifices. Now, the sacrifices, oh, I'm so frustrated that this slideshow fell, but sorry, please bear with me. According to the sources, when Beit HaMikdash was still there, and we used to sacrifice the daily sacrifices, the time of the morning sacrifice started here on the first ray of light, but usually they sacrificed it on the fourth hour. Why? Because the sacrifice was being sacrificed after many other sacrifices. It would have been the end sacrifice of the morning, not the beginning sacrifice of the morning. And so the Talmud states that the time of the sacrifice, of the morning sacrifice, starts at Amud HaShachar, on the first light of the day, and you're allowed actually to sacrifice there, but usually they would sacrifice around the fourth hour of the day. Therefore, this is the time frame for Shacharit, exactly these times. Now, the Talmud states, and this is based on a Mishnah also, that the Vatikin, the most special devout people, would pray right when the first light was out, the first ray of sun, which is called Hanetz Hachama. When the first light of sun comes out, was the time to pray. And it was based on this pasuk that we read also here. They shall fear you with the sun. With the sun means even though morning by definition starts here, when there is the first light before the first ray of sun, you bless God and you fear God. You express your love and fear of God with the sun, when the sun rises. That means here, on the first ray of sun, Hanetz Hachama. Okay? So that is why, and there you can still see minyanim like that in many places, in Israel everywhere, also in America, I think everywhere. I assume that in most big communities in the world, you will see special minyanim, usually smaller amount of people, especially if it's in the summer, where they wake up before the sun, they pray shacharit, directing the time that exactly on Hanetz Hachama, on the time of the first ray of sun, according to their local time, they're starting Amidah. They're starting the silent prayer of Amidah. And this is considered a very, very big thing. Okay? Now, of course, you're allowed to say the prayer. When we're saying prayer, we're basically talking about Amidah. So you're allowed to say the prayer basically from Hanetz Hachama till the fourth hour. And, of course, according to the source that we saw here in this page, to connect the Shema, the Geula, to the Tefillah, the redemption to the prayer. Of course, if you missed it, let's say it's the summer, you're not supposed to feel bad. Most communities miss it. Most communities pray in a time that is better for everybody, maybe 6 or 6:30. I'm talking now about the summer or about the times in Israel where it's not so extreme. Before prayer, before work, you're going to prayer, you pray, the sun is already up, and you're finishing, making sure that you're not finishing after the fourth hour. Now, what happens in Scandinavia in the winter? So in Scandinavia in the winter, basically, you can start praying here if you really need to. Of course, it's important to make sure as much as possible to start at Hanetz Hachama, at least the Amidah. So you start a bit before you get to the Amidah at Hanetz Hachama. If it's impossible for you for any reason, you can start here, the Amidah, but not before that. Before that, it's considered night, and you can't say the Amidah, you can't say Birkot HaShachar, you can't say anything. Okay? And then at the night, one last thing regarding this. It's really important in general when we talk about what's allowed and what's not allowed. it's important to remember that we should do the utmost effort to do things in the right way. Of course, there are ways to make things okay if the right way is not possible, especially in these positive mitzvot where it's not like you're stealing and we need to find a way how to make it better. It's praying. So things are a bit more flexible within the framework of the times of morning, afternoon, evening, but it's important to get to a point where we're doing things in the right way, not in the wrong way. Still, if you have a very stressful, so I'm just saying, all of us, all of you, should build in the day the right circumstances so you pray in the right time. If it's in the morning, it will be a bit after the beginning of work. If it's in the winter, I'm sorry, you start working and then you take a recess to pray that is enough time for you to pray. If it's in the summer, then wake up much earlier so you make sure you pray not too late and not too early. But if something happens, and that means happens once, yeah, not systematically. If you find out that systematically it's not possible, then you're planning your day wrong. But if it happens once that something happened and you can't, then you should know the laws of what are the extreme limits here and there. So the extreme early limit for shacharit is Amud Shachar. The extreme limit for shacharit, the extreme limit for shacharit in the end of it. So of course it's the fourth hour, as I said. This is not the extreme limit. This is the framework, but the rabbis said that if you didn't manage to pray until the fourth hour, you will be allowed to pray until midday. Since the sun is still in the eastern side of the sky, it will still be considered morning, even though they were not allowed to sacrifice the morning sacrifice after the fourth hour. But since we're talking about the morning prayer, even if you pray after the fourth hour until the sixth hour, it's okay. After that, you're not allowed to pray anymore. It will be bracha levatala. It will be a blessing for nothing, which is actually a sin. We're not allowed to mention God's name for no reason. We're not allowed to say a blessing for no reason. After the sixth hour, it's already considered for no reason. Now, I just want to clarify that if you're making the effort, if you're in an extreme situation and you started praying Amidah at Amud Shachar, bear in mind that the time for Shema did not start yet, right? And so you will have to pray the prayer, but then save time for saying Shema somewhere between Mishiyakir, between this point and the third hour. Okay, this is important to bear in mind. Now, regarding what you asked, Michael Levi Hillel, Birkot HaShachar. So Modeh Ani, you're right. Modeh Ani, there's no time for saying it. Once you wake up, you say Modeh Ani, and you referred truthfully to the idea, which I'm sure you will speak about a lot in the next class, that Modeh Ani doesn't have a mention of God at all. And it was constructed that way because Modeh Ani we're supposed to say right when we wake up, even before we wash our hands. In other words, when we're not holy yet, we're not clean enough to mention God's name, we can still say a blessing. We're expected to say a blessing that does not contain God's name. Okay? The rest of Birkot HaShachar are allowed to say from when you wake up. It has no connection to the time. There are opinions that the set of Birkot HaShachar, the list of prayers Hanoten lasechvi bina, etc., etc., etc. The list of short blessings, one after the other, that you can find in Birkot HaShachar is allowed to be said only from Misha Yakir. But if you're worried that you will miss it, it is better to say it even before that. Okay, any questions about Kriyat Shema and Shacharit before we move on to Mincha and Mariv?
Yeah,
I'm just saying that we have many more to say, so let's try and be fast.
Natan, what you
Yes.
say, you are saying Amud Shachar, but we have even Alot Shachar.
Alot HaShachar and Amud HaShachar is the same thing.
Ah, okay.
Yes. Any other question? I can't see your hand, so if you have, just speak out.
Okay, so I have just wanted to make sure I didn't misunderstand.
Yes.
So the extreme limit for Shacharit was Amud HaShachar until midday, the 6th hour. But for
Yes.
Shema, you were supposed to, the earliest was Mishi Yakir until the 3rd hour. Is that the
Right.
extreme limit of Shema, or
No, thank you. Thank you for reminding me. The rabbis say that also between the third and the fourth hour, it is still considered part of b'diavad. B'diavad, in other words, in the sideways, it will be considered part of the mitzvah of Shema, since it's still the time for Shacharit. But I'm reminding you that the Mishnah itself said that after that you should still say Shema. Shema does not contain this factor of bracha levatala. You should say Shema anyway, even if it's before night, because it's still Torah, still learning Torah. So you will not earn the mitzvah of Shema, but you will earn the mitzvah of learning Torah. And therefore, if you, for some reason, realize at 7 o'clock in the evening that you haven't said Shema yet, go ahead and say Shema.
okay, thank you.
Okay. Now Mincha. I'm wondering if we should read this because it's not really connected to the framework, but let's read it fast because it's just spectacular. This source is from Peninei Halacha. If you don't have this book by Rabbi Eliezer Melamed, uh, feel free to take my recommendation and buy it. It explains many of the Jewish laws in a very clear way, and he has a great passage regarding Mincha before he starts speaking about Mincha, which also is based on the Talmud, but he writes it so beautifully. So we'll just read it very fast. The Chachamim said a person should. Oh, maybe someone else can read it.
I can read it.
Please, please.
The Hamim said a person should always be conscientious concerning the Minha prayer, for indeed Eliyahu was only answered through the Minha prayer, Brahot 6b. One must be especially careful to pray Minha, since it is, unlike Shaharit and Marif, whose times are specified. Shaharit immediately after waking up from one's sleep, and Marif upon returning home. In Minha time, a person is often preoccupied with his affairs, therefore he must overcome his concerns and designate time to pray. Indeed, the purpose of Minha prayer is to sanctify a person's daily work in the face of all obstacles and difficulties, accusers and prosecutors. Therefore, specifically through his Minha prayer, Eliyahu was answered in his battle against the Baal worshippers. In the Minha prayer, a person infuses his daily life with holiness, lending an added sanctification of Hashem's name of the day. Perhaps for that reason, this prayer is named Minha, meaning donation and gift. By praying Shaharit, we fulfill our obligation to thank Hashem for all good He has given us. And in Minha, we add more prayers. Shaharit refers to everything that Hashem has given us in His abundant graciousness, and Minha arises from our daily actions.
Thank you very much. So this is some, I would say, not framework exactly. It's meaning, but I think it's so beautiful. I just had to bring it in. Don't be confused. We will soon see that Arvit actually has a is not exactly part of the Shacharit and Mincha. Shacharit and Mincha are both a very center part of the are both pillars of prayer. The first one for Shacharit for the morning daily offering, and Mincha for the afternoon daily offering. Rav Melamed here says very truthfully, I think, that in our day, Shacharit and Arvit are sort of a frame, which are easier to deal with. You have Shacharit in the morning and Arvit in the end, and Mincha sort of stands in the middle. So in that sense, Mincha is a little less stable, and what Rav Melamed here says is very meaningful in how to make Mincha a meaningful prayer. But in the sense of the origins of halacha, of course, Shacharit and Mincha are the pillars. Arvit is less like that. I see we have 3 more minutes. I'm wondering what we should do. So let's run through this without too much detail. The times of Mincha. Okay, the time of Mincha is between 6.5 hours. In other words, not exactly at 6 hours because we don't want to get confused when the sun is still in the eastern side, until basically until sunset. Okay, this is the time frame for mincha. There are different there are definitions of mincha gdola between 6.5 and 9.5, and mincha ktana between 9.5 and sunset. We won't get into it because we don't have time, but basically this is the whole time here for praying mincha. And there are opinions that even a bit after sunset is still okay, and in extreme times, even until 3 stars are out, but most people do not go by this. A little bit after sunset is still fine. A lot after sunset is already problematic. As you see, this is the biggest time frame of, or maybe not the biggest time frame of praying, but just make sure that you're designating a certain time in the day for that so you won't miss mincha. Okay, regarding Arvit, so again, we have 1 minute, so I won't get into all the details. Arvit starts with 3 stars. Okay, now the source of Arvit, as we said, basically there was no sacrifice at night, so that leads the sages to say that the evening prayer is optional. Um, the Rambam here says that they also instituted a prayer to be recited at night, since the limbs of the daily afternoon offering could be burnt the whole night. These are the remainants of the afternoon sacrifices would be burned the whole night. As Leviticus states, the burnt offering shall remain in the altar all night until morning. And the evening prayer is not obligatory, as are the morning and the mincha prayers. Nevertheless, the Jewish people in all the places that they have settled are accustomed to recite the evening prayer and have accepted it upon themselves in an obligatory prayer. In other words, the sages are not agreeing whether it is obligatory or not. Some think that it is obligatory, but the Rambam says even to the opinion that it is not that it is obligatory, it's not obligatory anymore. The people of Israel has accepted it upon themselves to pray Arvit. And the time is between when night starts. Night starts when there are 3 stars in the sky, until, as we said, the next morning, or until half of the night, like Shema. Here, even though there are two separate mitzvot, basically they have the same laws, since both of them are defined by night. Um, okay. There are a few more things that I thought I would share with you. I don't want to stop any of you to go about your day. So I will now let a few minutes for questions. Feel free to leave. And if there will be enough people who are interested in continuing a bit more, maybe 10 more minutes of knowledge, I'd be happy to stay more. But if anyone wants to leave, feel free to leave now. And if you want to have any questions, feel free to ask.
Yeah, I would just like to ask Rafsin if you could share your recommendation on the that chat phone. What was it called? The app, WhatsApp.
Maizmanim?
On the WhatsApp, if you could share your recommendation for the book you mentioned before.
Oh, Rav Melamed?
Yeah,
Yes.
and also your
Definitely.
presentation. Would that be sent by email, or should we do a big first?
I can check that. I can check that. I never did that, but
Oh,
why not?
thank
Mrs.
you.
Koponen? Esther Koponen?
Yes, sorry.
Yes.
Okay, so we were not going through the part of the women praying, but I know
It's
that
next. It's right next. Yeah.
yeah. So that is something. I have one book. No, I have it, but it's especially for women. How to pray, when to pray, even Asher Yatzer, everything. There are so many details for us women. Men are more obligated, I have understood, with a time frame, but of course it would be nice also if women are respecting the time frame too. But anyway, women are also waking up early because of the children and taking care of the whole household. So, but anyway, some people do like they take care of the children and then they pray. But when are the children going to see the mother to pray? It's also good for the children to see that mother is praying. So there are so many things with us women. So I let you speak.
Yes. So right after this, we will speak about women and prayer. So if you will stay, you will hear that. And I see that also Daniela Van Borg asked about females. Um, yeah. Regarding your question about Moda and Modeh, you will talk about it next week at length. Um, and regarding the obligation, we'll speak very shortly. Yes, Lancelot, Cecilia, and Ophelia.
Yes, I was just going to ask, what was the name of the app with the time frames for the
Maizmanim. I think it's a website. I'm not sure it's an app. Maybe it's also an app, but
My Money? Okay.
Actually, I
Thank you.
found it
It's
in the Apple Store. It's called Zmanim, and I can try to send you in the chat right now how it looks with the logo.
Thank you.
please.
go ahead.
My name.
Any other
Ah.
questions? If not, we will continue a few more minutes. Yes, Sarah?
So my questions goes back to the one in the conversion group about the words or the language of praying. Like,
That's also next.
okay, good. So I save it.
Okay, so let's go back. So, in Scandinavia, most communities do not have a minyan. If I don't know if Oslo has, Copenhagen has every day, every morning, but I think not in Mincha and Mariv. Malmo does not have, except for Shabbatot. So communal prayer is very, very important. And a Jew should make the utmost effort to pray with a minyan. I brought here a source from the Rambam about how important it is. We won't study it. Feel free to study it by yourself. But there are a few important things about praying not in a minyan. First of all, a person should have a special place for their prayer. It shouldn't be just any place in the house. It should be a designated place that this is where you know you pray. It shouldn't be in front of a mirror, and generally we should not pray in front of a mirror and not to see ourselves. We need to dedicate ourselves to God. And there are a few things that we're not saying when you're praying, when we're praying alone. Kaddish, Kedusha, Chazarat Hashatz, Torah reading, and Tachanun. And I'm sure that you will speak about it in the next classes. So this is regarding the minyan. Regarding the language of prayer. So the Mishnah already says that the language of prayer is any language. Also Shema, also prayer, and also Birkat Hamazon. Throughout the generations, there are different attitudes towards it. There are generations where the rabbis go by this statement full on, saying, yes, you don't know Hebrew, go ahead and pray in any language you want. It's already in the Mishnah. Some rabbis have led a direction that says, no, it's not that simple. You should not pray in any language you want, lechatchila, on the highway. But if you don't know any other language, it's better to pray in your language than not praying at all. And also here there are differences between if you're alone or if you're with a crowd, and so on and so forth. The bottom line is, and this is also the clear recommendation of the Scandinavian Beit Din, everyone should know Hebrew, and there's no similarity whatsoever between a prayer in your language and a prayer in Hebrew. No similarity whatsoever. You won't understand really what prayer is until you know Hebrew and until you understand what you're saying. But if you don't know Hebrew, please go ahead and pray in your own language. But our recommendation, and for those who are in conversion classes, it's almost a demand that you will hear anytime you meet a rabbi from the Scandinavian Beit Din, is to have an active advancement in that. In other words, pick the important prayers and one by one make sure to say them in Hebrew. For instance, start with Shema, the first sentence of Shema, say in Hebrew, even if you don't know the rest. Then the first paragraph of Shema, say in Hebrew. The first blessing of Amidah, say in Hebrew, and so on and so forth. The Birkot HaShachar, say in Hebrew. One by one, find the easier ones and the gradual advancement to at least say the important prayers in Hebrew, and don't give up on this. There's no similarity between praying in Hebrew and praying in your own language. I brought here from a source from Shulchan Aruch and other things that are connected to the structure of prayer. We won't go into it, but I urge you to look it up. Shulchan Aruch, Orach Chaim 102. It talks also about intention in prayer. You have to pray with intention. You have to pray not loud, but you have to voice your prayer. It shouldn't be only in your mind. And it talks there also about the differences of language. I will answer your questions in a minute. I will just get to the last slide, the slide of women. I know it concerns many of the members here, and then I will be happy to answer all your questions. So, as you might know, the law is, and we won't get into the value of it, there's a special class about it in the courses of the Scandinavian Beit Din, women are not obligated to any mitzvah that is connected to time, that is time-based. Women are not obligated in mitzvah that are connected to time, but they are obligated in all the rest of the mitzvot. And the question is, what here is time-based and what is not time-based? And it was important for me here to bring you not the bottom line, but the Talmud, because here you can see the values that the sages are dealing with. So here it's a source, we will still learn it fast, but I wanted you to see the discussion, not only the bottom line. Okay? So the Mishnah says, the Mishnah is the Tanaic source, the first source, the sages in the first century and before the first century. The first century is the end of the Mishnah, that says that women and slaves and minors are exempt of the recitation of Shema and from Tefillin, but they are obligated in the mitzvot of prayer, mezuzah, and grace after meals. So this is actually a closing of what we started speaking about in the class, right? Kriyat Shema is obviously time-based. When you go to sleep and when you wake up, right? Therefore, it is absolutely time-based. So women are not obligated in Kriyat Shema, but prayer, according to this source, according to the Mishnah, is not time-based. Soon we will see why all of us are now thinking, wait, we've just spoken about how prayer is time-based, right? But at least according to this class, and according to the Mishnah, since prayer, as opposed to Kriyat Shema, is not time-based, women are absolutely obligated to pray. Now the Gemara says, and here is, I'm saying it's a discussion. With regard to the recitation of Shema, the Gemara asks, that is obvious, as Shema is a time-bound positive mitzvah, and women are exempt from any time-bound positive mitzvah. Why then did the Mishnah need to mention it specifically? What was the first idea behind this? The Gemara replies, lest you say, since Shema includes the acceptance of the yoke of the kingdom of heaven, perhaps women are obligated in its recitation. Therefore, the Mishnah teaches us that nevertheless women are exempt. So here you can see it's an amazing piece of work here of the discussion, saying, of course, Shema is important. It's accepting the yoke of kingdom of heaven. What could be more important? We know that that Shema is time-based, and therefore women are not obligated. But the reason why the Gemara writes it is because any person in their right mind would say, of course I'm obligated. In any woman, I'm saying, even women, of course, men also, but any woman would say, of course I'm obligated. This is where I accept the yoke of God. So here I'm saying, we're talking about what are women obligated to do, but obviously the Gemara also hints here that it makes a lot of sense for a woman to go ahead and recite the Shema even if she's not obligated, because it's so important. Now, with regard to being obligated in prayer, the Gemara explains that since prayer is supplication for mercy and women also require divine mercy, they are obligated. However, lest you say, since regarding prayer it is written evening and morning and afternoon, I pray and I cry, perhaps prayer should be considered a time-bound positive mitzvah and women should be exempt. The Mishnah teaches us that fundamentally the mitzvah of prayer is not time-bound, and therefore everyone is obligated. So women are obligated in prayer. The question is how much? So now, just before reading this list and sending you off, I would say this discussion is about what women are obligated. Of course, that every person, man and woman, should make the utmost effort to pray all the prayers and to pray them fully. And if a person loses this, and I'm talking also about about religious women, of religious, that grew up in Judaism and religious Judaism. Any person who loses the experience of praying 3 times a day is losing something in their Jewish experience, and they're lacking something in their connection to God and to Judaism. I'm saying it bluntly like this. Still, like someone said here, women have different tasks. Maybe some people would say that women need it less. Others would say that women are less capable of doing it because of their obligations in life. I don't like neither of these ideas. But we won't get into feminism and Judaism here. This is not the time. I would just say, I recommend to you, and especially if you're in the conversion process, but also if not, don't use this as an excuse not to pray. Okay? Try to pray as much as possible. It will be one of the biggest things that get you connected to Judaism. Prayer, without any doubt. Okay? Now, we will just read there are many discussions about if women are obligated of prayer, what are they obligated of? So first of all, since we learned that Arvit also for men originally is not obligatory, then of course for women it's even less obligatory. The Rambam says that only the mitzvah from the Torah is the obligation, but not the 3 times a day establishment, which is from the rabbis. In other words, there is a mitzvah from the Torah to pray, and this mitzvah is not time-bound, but the idea of praying 3 times in a certain time, this is time-bound, and this comes from the rabbis, and therefore, a woman is not obligated to pray those 3 prayers that are time-bound. She is obligated to pray during the day, and this statement of the rabbis took many rabbis of later generations different versions of what it means. So some say it means that a woman is obligated to pray 2 prayers a day, just like man. This is not according to the Rambam. This is according to the other rabbis who think that the obligation of the Torah is the 3 times a day, and nevertheless, this is an obligation for women, like we read here in the Talmud. One says at least you will have a woman should have 1 prayer a day. And other rabbis say you don't have to do the established prayer only Amidah, and there are different opinions of only once a day or twice a day. And there are opinions that a woman is obligated to do only Birkot HaShachar. Again, I suggest don't use it as an excuse. And I would say even that in the framework of the Beit Din or of your process, if you will tell yourself that you don't need to pray because of what we learned here, you will lose a lot. But it's still important to know the halacha. We're 20 minutes after time. It's amazing that so many of you stayed. I'm here for more questions if you like, but please feel free to leave also. Yes, Chaya and Benny.
I have a question. There are exceptions that you can interrupt the prayer.
That's not higher
Exceptions to interrupt the prayer?
No, I mean that if you, for example, somebody in the family is getting sick and you are praying, or another exceptions. I ask in which exceptions the prayer can be interrupted.
This you will learn in the next few classes. This is about the content of the prayers.
Okay.
Yes, Chaya and Benny.
Thank you.
Yes.
No, it's not a question, just a little comments. First, I don't think we need to think about the differences between women and men, because women in Judaism are very special, considered very special. We're very protected. We have our very own mitzvahs, and I think it's above and beyond anything. It's beautiful. So I don't think there is
Okay.
the needy. And the second thing about the prayers, I think it's very important to learn the prayers, not only Hebrew, but we have Kaddish, which is not even Hebrew. It's Aramaic. So it's very important to learn it. It's very own, very original version of the prayer.
This is exactly what you will learn in the next few weeks.
Yeah.
Thank you. Any other question? No. Okay. So Chodesh Tov, Shavua Tov. Thank you for staying so much. And I hope that our prayer will be heard in the right time and that we will have a good month and a month full of light.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Shavua Tov.
תודה רבה. שבוע טוב.
Yes, Anushka, you raised. Oh,
Tov.
okay.
Shabbat tov.
Shabbat Tov.
Shavua Tov, Chodesh Tov.
Chodesh
Chodesh Tov.